Hello and welcome. This is Bhuvan Unhelkar. In this particular module, we are discussing another dynamic diagram of the UML. It is called the state machine diagram. Occasionally, we drop the word machine and just call it a state diagram. It's also called a state chart at times. It does one very important function, and therefore it is conceptually a different diagram. Now, if we look at classes in a class diagram, stock standard example is customer and account. Then we discuss how customer can send a message to account and vice versa, as we did in the sequence diagrams studied in the previous module. But a customer can be in one state and another customer in another state. A simple example, Bhuvan belongs to class person and Mary belongs to class person. Class person has got two methods, sit and stand. Bhuvan, the object, is in the state of sitting, and Mary, the object, is in the state of standing. So a state machine diagram does this vital job. It takes one object belonging to a class and shows all possible states in which that object can be. The caveat is that Bhuvan, the object, could be sitting and Bhuvan, the object, could be standing, and the object might start at any state. I might start at standing or sitting state. So when it comes to executing the program, the logic, usually the controller logic, needs to know whether when Bhuvan is instantiated as an object from the class person, what should be the first state. If we look at customer in a bank, the state diagram can say whether the customer is created as a active customer. You must have experienced with the account class. When you go and open an account in a bank, you are required to at times deposit a basic amount of $10 or $5. In other banks, you can open an account without a balance. So your initial state for an account which is open needs to be shown in the state diagram. Then you deposit some money. The state of the account does not change. So it is a self transition. But if you withdraw more than what you have in a savings or checking account, and if you have set appropriate parameters, your account can go into overdraft or negative. Now that's another state. And then you put some more money back and the balance becomes positive. The state of the account moves from overdraft to open. You can have a closed state if the customer withdraws all the amount. So in a state diagram, you find states of one object, a standard example object. For account, it's open, overdrawn, closed, suspended, hacked whatever states you want to show. And then there are conditions. Under what condition? So in UML we call them guard conditions. These are the conditions that are guarding the state, and once those conditions are met, the state transitions to another state. And the conditions are business rules, things that we might code, things that a user might set as a parameter. In my case, going -50 is an overdrawn account. In your case, -500 is still not overdrawn, as in no caution is sent because you are a known customer, a good customer, for example. So you will find I have shown states, I have shown arrows to show the flow. Then there are conditions in square brackets that you put. Then there are decision boxes. Now decision boxes can be confusing because they might give you an a feeling that this is like a flow chart. And decades ago, when I drew my first state machine diagram, I drew it almost like a flow chart. But remember, there are no two classes or objects or states from two classes represented on a state machine diagram, nor two use cases or activity diagrams. So one way of testing whether your state machine diagram is conceptually correct, semantically correct or not, is to see if all these states, open and overdrawn and closed and suspended, belong to an object that belongs to one class. And these are states, so these are not activities. So even the way in which you name the state, like open and closed, is a good indicator rather than opening and closing, although those can also be states, like standing and sitting that I explained to you earlier. But for your purpose, the state is a given state in which an object can be. And then of course remember to add notes to all your UML diagrams, including the state diagrams. And then there are those pseudo states, the open state and the start and the stop state, which help in your readability. Where do I start? What is my first state when an object is created? So your start state, which is a pseudo state, tells a reader this is where you start. And usually you have one start state and you can have many stop or no stop states. And finally, you can have states within states. So for example, if your account is open, you might want to show the overdrawn and suspended as part of open. So you have a main state open, within that you have a normal open, overdrawn, overdraft open, and suspended but still open. So have a look at the examples I have given, typically from the hospital domain, where I have given you all these concepts through examples: open and closed states, self transitions, decision points, guard conditions, nesting. And usually we draw one state machine diagram for an object, a object, but of course it is belonging to a class. So a class which is more or less an anonymous class, you don't care which object so long as there is an instance of that particular class, so an anonymous instantiation. And therefore you will find that if you go to your case tool, typically Visio and Star UML, and right click on a class. It'll give you an option whether you want to create a state machine diagram for that class. So be clear that although it shows for that class, it is not for a class, it's for an object belonging to that class. Why? Because objects have states. For all practical purposes, your and my practical purposes, classes won't have states. And I'm qualifying it because once in a while they do, but that's outside the scope of our study. For our purposes, classes don't have state. Customer as a class doesn't have a state. But Bhuvan, the object belonging to class customer, has a state. So keep all that in mind and continue to enjoy the study as much as I am enjoying presenting it. Take care. Bye bye.